Okay, we are live, but we got to let the stream breathe here just for a second as we weave in the entire MHH family. We got to bring in the Facebook peeps, get them on the same page with us here. And we are good. Welcome in, everybody, to the Huddle Up podcast, presented as always by Mile High Huddle and powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, as always, my partner in crime, my fellow football priest. You know him, you love him. He is Zack Kelberman. And Zack, today is our traditional aftermath episode as the Broncos are coming off that bitter 22-16 loss to the Chiefs at Arrowhead. We had a really unfortunate piece of news with regard to the injury bug once again, and I'm going to serve this over to you, but I tweeted today, I'm trying to think. Was there a game this year in which the Broncos emerged from the game without an injury that either landed them on injured reserve or season-ending injury? I'm really racking my brain, but drop some knowledge on Broncos country on the unfortunate injury news today.
Yeah, for anyone who saw Sang Bassi limp off the field, it had the looks of a severe injury, and Vic Fangio confirmed today that he is indeed out for the rest of the season, the remaining games. It is a torn ACL, even though Fangio said more test results are pending, but Ian Rappaport of NFL Network reported he tore his ACL. The good news is he should be ready in time for week one next year. The bad news is obviously the Broncos secondary takes another hit now. They're already without Bryce Callahan. They cut Devontae Harris. They won't play Devontae Bosby, so they have Boye, Ojemudia, and Duke Dawson as your primary cornerbacks. It's unfortunate for Bassi, Chad. For an undrafted rookie, he played a solid season this year. He was asked to do a lot in a Vic Fangio defense, and he held up relatively well. It sucks for him, but at least he earned a spot on next year's roster, and he could be a fixture in the secondary for a while.
The only silver lining here, and excellent article, by the way, reporting on all this stuff today, Zack. But the only silver lining is reinforcements are on the way in the form of Will Parks. Right. But, playing nickel corner is not his forte. I know that Parks did that a lot for Fangio last year, but it's not his – it's not the best hat he's suited for. His best position on the field is either as a strong safety straight up or as a dime backer. And you don't want to confuse the two. You don't want to confuse a dime backer and a nickel corner or a nickel slot corner. Two different responsibilities, two different, many different boxes that you have to check. So at least there's that, though, Zack, that they're getting Will Parks back. But at the end of the day, I'm just not sure how much that's really going to help them in terms of covering those fast slot corner or receivers. This week, I'm trying to think who the slot corner is in Carolina, but you got Buffalo coming up with Cole Beasley. That's not a guy Will Parks can hang with.
Chad, Carolina is loaded. They have Curtis Samuel. They have DJ Moore. I mean, that is a very fast offense on top of having Christian McCaffrey and Teddy Bridgewater, who can scramble as well. The secondary, I'm right there with you. Will Parks playing this week will be nice, but he's best suited to play safety or, like you mentioned, a linebacker down in the box. He is not the replacement for the slot cornerback. Bassi was the replacement for the slot guy, who was Bryce Callahan. I'd rather Will Parks play safety and take some snaps away from Kareem Jackson in coverage than try to play cornerback. That's a disaster waiting to happen, in my opinion.
But, it's actually quite the success story if you're saying Bassi, because not only, he goes undrafted out of Wake Forest. The Broncos loved him, though. He was almost the 7th-round pick, he was on the table as an option for the Broncos late in that draft. Fangio identified him, loved him, brought him in. And, honestly, I saw him as maybe being a practice squad guy. But not only did he make the roster over Devontae Bosby, because remember, the Boz got cut at the end of training camp because Bassi, in the final couple of days of training camp, Fangio gave him a look with the ones at nickel, and that totally reshuffled kind of the cornerback totem, if you will, totem pole. But nevertheless, he ends up, as you reported here, Zack, 21 solo tackles for his undrafted rookie campaign, couple of pass breakups, 1 interception. And he ended up playing 46.47% of defensive snaps. unbelievable.
Yeah, I was surprised how heavy when I looked that up, how heavy he was used in that secondary. But that's really encouraging because he is an undrafted rookie. And to play cornerback or to play defensive back or really any position in the Vic Fangio defense, it's not for the faint of heart. You can't be stupid and play in a Vic Fangio D. So as saying Bassey, he showed enough this year. Again, it's unfortunate that his season's cut short, but he showed enough in his limited time on the field where he could be a guy that can count on going forward. Maybe not a starter, but you can never have enough depth in that back end. And I think he's the fixture in that department.
We've got a tweet coming up here. John, go ahead if you can. Share it on the screen from Isang Bassey. I can throw it up too. By the way, I'm not sure on the pronunciation. I've heard the coaches call him Isang Bassey, but then I've heard it pronounced by others as Isang Bassey. But here's Isang saying, thank you all for the well wishes. Lord, I trust you. Prayer hands. Hashtag FCHW. What does that mean, Zach? Interpret. I don't know.
I have
either.
no idea. No, click on it. See if see where it takes you.
Best wishes to Bassey and a speedy recovery. But gang, we got a lot more to get to tonight in terms of going through the aftermath of this pod. That's all right, John. Just 86 on out of there. A lot to get to. We see a bunch of questions. It's good to see each and every one of you. Charlie, you got Zach in the house, Travis, Stu Meat, Spicy Mike, Muhammad, the MHH male model in the house. We got Steve Baumgartner, who did a great job helping us as a moderator in the gut reaction stream last night. Good job. We'll get to all that stuff. But first, gang, as is our tradition here, we got to take care of a few quick matters of business, starting with the sponsor of tonight's live stream.
Yeah, as always, guys, tonight's live stream podcast is brought to you exclusively by sportsbetting.com. Broncos country gambling, as you well know, is now legal in the state of Colorado, and here's what makes sportsbetting.com a no-brainer for sports fans just like you. Sharp odds and low juice. In-house bookmakers. They're not a third-party service. Reduced juice and the best prices you will find out there among any competitor. Hassle-free bonuses with a one-time rollover. That means the bonus money is yours after you bet it just one time, whereas other sites make you bet it 5 to 30 times. Big difference there. Also, 24/7 live customer support. You are always getting a real live human being, never an agent, never a robot, always someone in the good old US of A. But here's the kicker. At sportsbetting.com, you get a 100% risk-free week of sports betting up to $1,000. Not just one bet, but all of your bets. Play for a week, and if your loss exceeds your winnings at the end of the week, sportsbetting.com will cover 100% of the difference up to $1,000 with a one-time rollover. So head on over to sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle. That's sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle and capitalize on a risk-free week of sports betting up to $1,000.
All right, guys, couple other quick things, and then we'll dive right back into the content we have planned for you tonight. Follow the podcast on Twitter at HuddleUpPod. While you're at it, the main account at Mile High Huddle. And my partner, Zack Kelberman, at Kelberman NFL, myself at Chad and Jensen. And we also want to gently draw your attention to the merch store. 'Tis the holiday season, and you can head on over to huddleuppod.com right now, get your swag on, or maybe get a swag on for some MHHer in your family. It's another way to support what we're doing here. Get a trucker hat, get a football priest hat, face masks, hoodies, mugs. We need to probably hire someone to make the merch store their full-time focus. But, we created the merch store. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary based on your popular demand. And so we are so grateful for how you have, as our community and audience, patronized that store and supported us with that. It all adds up and it all goes a long way. So check it out. Also, shout out to our Facebook supporters. If you want to become an official supporter, you go to the page, facebook.com/milehighhuddle. You'll see the big blue button to become a supporter. It's another way to support what we're doing here at MHH. And also, if you're watching right now on Facebook, you'll see us go through and give special priority and focus and shout outs to our Super Chat superstars on YouTube. If you don't like being on YouTube and you're a Facebook guy or gal, that's all good. You can send stars, I should say, while you're live watching us. You just right down there where you'd send the chat comment, the little comment box where you type in what you want to say, you'll see the little option there. It's just another way to support what we're doing here. But if you're not in a position to do any of those things, it's all good. We are just stoked to have you here with us. We do ask, though, each and every person within the sound of our voice, do these 3 things. Number 1, subscribe. Number 2, like this video. It's especially crucial on YouTube and Facebook. And then the last thing, number 3, is share it out there. If you think Zach and I are doing a good job, the litmus test for us is whether or not you share these videos, these podcasts out on your social media and help us continue to grow and reach new like-minded Broncos fans just like you. All right, Zach, curious topic last night because, when we do the gut reactions, we literally come live, 5 minutes from the final gun on average. We're going
If
live.
that.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we like to do. We want it raw. We want it now. We want to get it off our chest, and we want that for you guys too. We want your emotions to come out in the conversation and your topics and all that. So we oftentimes, though, miss the actual pressers that are occurring post-game. And then once we hop off and we're done broadcasting, we'll go either watch the Zooms or we will, get the quotes sent to us by the PR department. And there's quite a few actual comments that came from the Broncos and Travis Kelce, which I want to get to, that article you had today. First and foremost, Zach, from Vic Fangio. Now, we kind of lambasted him for his decision to punt on that fateful 4th and 3 at midfield with 6 minutes left in the game. And I want to read this quote today. And then, let me read this first. This was Fangio on Sunday, all right? Similar principle in that it was still raw, right? The nerve is still exposed. Quote, on punting or going for it on 4th and 3 instead of punting. Quote, I gave it a strong consideration, but at some point in the game, we've got to get a stop, and we weren't able to there. We held them to a field goal, but that made it a touchdown game and burned out some of the time there. Not some, almost all of the time, coach. Back to coach. Quote, so in retrospect, probably we should have gone for it, but I did give it serious thought, close quote. And then Zach, today, he kind of backpedaled on that a little bit, but he did provide some further rationale for why, kind of justify his decision on if he would change his decision to punt on 4th and 3. This is on Monday. No, quote, no, with 6.5 minutes to go, roughly, no matter what we had done, if we had continued that drive and successfully converted the 4th down, we were going to have to come up with a stop on defense. Our strong suit hasn't been 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4th, 4th and 2s, 4th and 3s. In fact, I think we haven't converted any of the 4th and 2s and 3s we've tried all year. So combining that fact with the fact that we were going to have to get a stop no matter what, I chose for that to be the time for us to go get a stop. We punted it down there. I believe they got at about the 10, and we needed to come up with a stop at some point in the game, regardless of what we chose to do on the 4th down. So that was the time that I chose to get the stop. Unfortunately, we held them to a field goal, but it burned too much time at that point. Closed quote. Zach, your reaction to Fangio on one hand, expressing regret that he made the wrong decision and then kind of backtracking on that today.
Yeah, I don't pick up too much regret from Fangio. It seems like he's trying to talk himself into what he said last night about the decision and talk himself into justifying that decision. And, I side when you mentioned that remark about the previous 4th and 2s and 4th and 3s. Those don't matter. None of this matters in the previous weeks. You're playing that last night's game in that moment. Previous 4th downs have nothing to do with that situation. You have nothing to lose. As you laid out, Chad, on the pod last night, the Broncos were literally nothing to lose, everything to gain in that one scenario. To punt the ball away shows a lack of confidence in your players and also a lack of fight to do whatever it takes to win. And what's the old Gretzky expression? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I'd rather try for the 4th and 3, try to put the stake in the game, try to pull off the upset, than try to punt it away and rely on analytics and my past experiences. This is where Fangio is not comfortable being a head coach. And you can excuse this last year. He was a rookie coach, but I don't want to hear about pandemic. I don't want to hear about injuries. I don't want to hear about anything. The comfort level and the intuitive nature of the job has to come to him eventually, Chad. You can't keep waiting around for it. He has to know in that situation, no matter what someone's telling him from above, no matter what the computer model says, you have to go with what you think is best for your team and your players, what they would respond to best. Punting the ball away did not resonate positively with the fan base or the locker room. And I feel like if he would have went for it, even if he didn't get it, he would have gotten more respect regardless.
And it also came on the heels, let us not forget, and Zach Lee Butler, we will get to we can talk about how injuries have affected this season and what it might have looked like without injuries here in a minute. But Zach, the 4th and 3 questionable decision there, I get what he meant in terms of you needed to get another stop at some point in this game. Odds are, because you were already at the 50 basically, right? And so what he's saying is even their best laid plans, like if everything went perfectly and it was run 4 yards, run 4 yards, run 4 yards, and then touchdown or whatever, they were still going to have to kick it back to Mahomes. So at some point, they were going to have to get a stop. I get that. But go ahead, Zach.
No, I don't mean to interrupt you. You have to kick it back to them anyway. If you score or you're punting, they get the ball back either way. So why not go for the whole thing? Go for the gusto. That's what I don't understand. I'm sorry.
Take your opportunity. Take your chance now while you have the opportunity to seize the moment. Right. Instead of losing what modest amount of control of your own destiny you had in that moment. But what makes it all the more questionable and unfortunate for Coach Fangio is it came on the heels of another kind of small blunder that I think a lot of people missed, in that, I castigated somewhat Brandon McMahon I shouldn't say castigated. I put him on the losers list of our winners and losers only because he missed a 57-yard field goal and how it affected the game. Not just that it was a miss, but the fact that the Chiefs quickly used that short field and momentum to go get points, et cetera, et cetera. But, Zach, on that missed field goal, Fangio wasn't sure, and so he called a timeout. He actually iced his own kicker. All right, now this is something that I want to credit the guys over at the Fan on the Drive, D-Mac and Tyler Palumbus. Tyler Palumbus somehow, I don't know where he got the analytics, but he revealed his study on this issue that when a kicker from 50 trots out onto the field, gets a timeout called, et cetera, it reduces the odds of that being a good field goal by 10%. So whether the timeout comes from the opponent or your own side, the fact that you go out there, go through the motion, go through your little wind up and whatnot, and then have to stop and then recalibrate, it affects kickers by way of a 10% margin. Ended up missing that kick. So Fangio, we talk about the little things, right? The margins for error, and the Broncos, if they were going to beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead, it would need to be nearly a perfect game. There's no such thing probably as a perfect game, but they had to walk that razor's edge, the margin of error, razor thin. And unfortunately, in a couple of key moments, the coaches, by way of Vic Fangio, kind of let them down.
And you know what? Preceding Fangio was the Broncos' offense stalling. They shouldn't have ever attempted a 57-yard field goal in that situation because they could have kept picking up the first down and marching toward the end zone. I forget the plays that were called before that, Chad, but I'm sure Pat Shurmur wasn't dialing up the best for the Broncos' offense. So again, on his face, Fangio is a great defensive mind, an elite defensive mind. And some weeks he's a pretty decent head coach, but the situational coaching or lack thereof, I feel like I've said this term a billion times in the last 8 or 9 weeks, but with Pat Shurmur, with Tom McMahon, with Vic Fangio, the in-the-moment coaching, when things strike and different situations unfold, and you have to make a split-second decision based on gut feeling and intuition, not based on analytics, that's where the Broncos have problems. So it's either inexperience or incompetence, but it's hurting Denver a lot on the field.
I mean, that's the thing, is it's just one of those, it's a catch-22. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't when it comes to trying to analyze Vic Fangio's body of work as the head coach, because – and just using yesterday's game as a microcosm, he calls a brilliant defense, forcing the Chiefs to dink and dunk up the field, up and a lot of yards and whatnot. But in the red zone, they hold them out, only allow one touchdown, and it was a brilliant game plan by Vic Fangio, who again using the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike, trying to plug all these personnel holes and make his defense work and contend against a Goliath like the Chiefs with so many different backups at key positions. All the credit in the world for that. But then all it takes, Zach, to undo all that and to unravel it and take the luster off of that achievement, in a defeat, albeit, is 2 bad decisions in what turned out to be critical moments. Zach, real quick here, David wants to know, Drew Lock is not very accurate on deep passes. Why don't we just dink and dunk down the field? We have a few shifty guys. Zach, everyone, they think Patrick Mahomes, for example. You see all the highlights, right, on Sunday night after the game, you're watching ESPN or NFL Network, or you're on YouTube, and you see the cut-ups of all the big plays, the highlights. And it's always Mahomes over the top deep, Tyreek Hill or Sammy Watkins or Travis Kelce. But if you actually chart that offense, Patrick Mahomes is arguably one of the greatest game managers.
Yes.
Dink, dunk, dink, dunk, dink, dunk. And then when he gets outside the pocket, boom, it is over the top and it is a touchdown. That's something that Drew Lock needs to learn how to do. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes' instinct and just feel for it. And, he's the unicorn. You can't try and compare what you have in Drew Lock to the unicorn that is Patrick Mahomes. But nevertheless, Drew Lock, when he gets outside the pocket, he typically tries to do the same thing. Go deep. But the problem is, when the play breaks down, right? Not necessarily a design boot or something. When the play's breaking down, he has to bust loose. That's when Mahomes goes for the throat, and more often than not, he comes out on top. In Drew Lock's case, he has that same instinct, but the problem is his read, his accuracy, and the whole shebang is not on point on the same level of Patrick Mahomes. And often it comes, Zach, the reason it becomes such a head scratcher, like the first pick he threw, where he threw it directly to the DB trying to get it to Troy Fumagalli on a broken play. He had Nick Vanette wide open underneath.
Going like this.
Yeah, he just doesn't take what the defense gives him, and he keeps missing that. And Fangio remained adamant today. He's like, look, one of the things I'll read the quote here in a minute to be specific, but Fangio said we did see development from Drew Lock, and that's an article probably that we need to get to. Fangio explains how Drew Lock has shown improvement and development. We'll get to that at some point in this week's work docket, but Drew Lock does need to get better as a deep passer, and not only from an accuracy perspective, but from a read, discerning what the defense, honing that instinct better. It's not been good up to this point.
Great point you made, Chad. It's something I've noticed watching Kansas City's offense, and you know why they have the big plays, you know why they have the highlights, because they're never in, if you watch a Kansas City game, they're never in a 3rd and 10, 2nd and 11. They are always in 3rd and short, or not even 3rd down sometimes. They are always moving the ball down the field. It's always matriculating, positive momentum in every play. Mahomes isn't taking deep shots on every snap. He's checking down a lot. To Travis Kelce, to a running back, to a receiver. He's working the field entirely, Chad. So I thought this could be epitomized, this question, on the KJ Hamler drop. It was 3rd down and 3 in a clutch situation. You're calling a 20-yard play down the field. Why not something high percentage in the middle of the field, a swing pass, a screen pass, a quick into a receiver to get the first down and keep the chains moving? My answer to this question in a really roundabout way is coaching. And when you put Drew Lock on the Kansas City offense, I don't think he's as bad as he is with Denver in certain situations. You put Patrick Mahomes in the Broncos offense with Pat Shurmur, is he still as explosive? Coaching makes a huge difference, guys, and you saw that in last night's game.
No doubt. Tom El Greco, our superstar, one of our many superstars up there north of the 49th parallel, which is the border, right, that separates. I was asked that the other day, what is the 49th parallel? The parallel of the earth that separates the United States from Canada. Tom El Greco, appreciate you, my dog. He says, hey, Zach, if you think Locke isn't, as you quoted, a Pro Bowl caliber QB, then why settle for mediocrity? Can you clarify? Thanks, Zach. You did say that yesterday, Zach. I remember you saying that. He's not a Pro Bowl guy.Maybe you meant he's not that now. I don't know, but Zach, elucidate.
Well, I'm a huge Locke fan, but is he a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback? I don't think so based on what I've seen. Could he still be the franchise guy going forward? Could he still win the job for next year? Sure. And if he does that, takes a step forward, then he could be a Pro Bowl guy. But I think it's not reactionary or it's not biased to say right now, Chad, based on what we've seen, Pro Bowl guys don't throw 2 picks against the Chiefs and come up short with, a handful of passing yards. So for now, he has promise and he still has a ceiling and he's not as bad as some people make him out to be. But I don't think it's anything wrong to say he's on a Pro Bowl guy. And it's not settling for mediocrity. It's just calling like it is. If the Broncos, and I've been saying this for 3 years now, they don't need a Pro Bowl quarterback. They don't need an all-pro quarterback. They just need competency. They need consistency. They need above average quarterback play. With this defense, that's a playoff team. It's as simple as that.
My take on this, and by the way, Marco, we feel you. Next year, it was great effort all around. Even Drew Lock, he was a contributing factor to why this game was close down to the wire. He just also was a contributing factor into why it didn't work out in the Broncos' favor. But we feel you. Better luck next year. We'll see how it goes. But my answer, to kind of piggyback off what Zach said, is I think Drew Lock has, in the same way that Derek Carr, and let's face it, Derek Carr, I want to say 3 Pro Bowls on his resume, and all of them really early. It might have been year 1, year 2, year 3 in the league. Kind of got lucky and guys bowing out, older vets making the Pro Bowl, but being in the playoffs. And so he's the next guy up, ends up in the Pro Bowl, and it's on his resume, and you can't take that away from him. In Drew Lock's case, I can see him to this day, right now, just based on what we've seen, I think he has the potential to be that kind of a guy. A Derek Carr type of, and this might, right now, you might have there might be listeners rolling their eyes going, oh, if Derek Carr is the ceiling on Drew Lock, then we need to move on. But Derek Carr is a very underrated quarterback. He really is. And there's a lot of differences in terms of the skill set between those two particular quarterbacks. But nevertheless, in terms of, trajectory, arc, what you can kind of look at as a short-term ceiling for Drew Lock, I think something like that, where on his rookie deal, within that first 3 or 4 years, if the Broncos, can stay healthy and if they can keep the same coaching staff, and we'll see what happens with Pat Shurmur after this year and whatnot, I think he'll end up sticking around. But nevertheless, Drew Lock has the potential, if the Broncos do the right things, and if he does the right things development-wise, to be that kind of a guy and then continue to grow. I mean, even Ben Roethlisberger early in his career, he was a lot more fortunate in terms of getting the right coach, being drafted into a situation where he was getting the right coaching and benefiting from an elite defense early on in his career. And just things kind of fell into place for him. But Ben was a quarterback that for a long time was a guy when he dropped back to pass or the pocket broke and he had to get outside, you don't know if that's going to be a huge play or a pick. That's how it was for him. Same with Brett Favre when he was young. But over time, these guys kind of develop and they figure it out. And, it can change over a larger sample size. And I don't think that's outside the realm of the possible. I'm not taking that off the table for Drew Lock up to this point. As it stands today, from what we've seen from Drew, has any of his body of work in 2020 been Pro Bowl caliber? Absolutely not. Not even close. But he's still a young guy within his rookie window. And when I say that, I mean, has he played or appeared in 16 games yet as a starting quarterback? He's inching close. He's getting there. Almost. He's 2 games away, I believe. But he's not quite there yet. So the jury's still out, but I'm not eliminating that as a possibility, Zach.
But the thing about Derek Carr, and I agree with you, he's very underrated and gets a lot of flack for being on the Raiders and being in the West. And, Broncos fans naturally hate the guy. But who is the one team that beat the Chiefs this year? And what is the reason why the Raiders, for the most part, are in playoff contention? Their offense and Derek Carr. And John Gruden has done a really good job coaching and maximizing his ability. Derek Carr is never going to be Patrick Mahomes, but the Raiders realize that, and they're hiding his weaknesses for the most part and maximizing his strengths. And I saw a comment on the side here that says, put Locke in a Kyle Shanahan offense and see what happens. I venture to guess that Locke would be a lot more consistent. He would take a lot less stupid chances, and he put up better numbers with better coaching around him. So is there still room to grow? Yes. Have we seen flashes? Yes. Have anything indicated this season he could be a Pro Bowler? I love the guy a lot, but I can't go there yet.
Kenneth wants to know, hey, do you think the Jets lost on purpose? No. Who plays man coverage, gets beat jumping a short route on a Hail Mary situation with no safety coverage over the top?
The Jets do. That's
what they do. Now Zach has a storied and sordid history with the Jets. He might be able to provide some additional insight on this. But nevertheless, there is a conspiracy theory going around out there that it was so just bizarre of a call. Just, a rookie defensive coordinator doesn't make that mistake, let alone a guy like Greg Williams, who, yes, he's known for being an aggressive blitzer, but has also been around the NFL block. He's been a head coach. He's been a defensive coordinator for probably freaking half the teams in the league. He's a multi-decade NFL coach. Was that the message? Was that, hey, gang, we want to maintain our number one, spot in the draft. We want to land Trevor Lawrence. Do not win this game. I don't know. I tend not to really believe that type of stuff, but it's definitely a conspiracy theory that, based on the surface, is alluring, right?
Well, they fired him today, so that should end that conspiracy theory. I mean, if they wanted to tank, they wouldn't have fired the guy. I mean, it seemed like he went kind of rogue with that play call, but it was just stupidity. He literally cannot help himself. He calls 0 blitzes like we drink water, Chad. Almost every other down, he's blitzing the opposing quarterback. And you know what? It's not in terms of theories or conspiracies or trying to tank. It's just a coach got lost in a stupid moment. And what I want to say about Fangio is, he's been around the block a while too, Chad, but he has to know, watching the Chiefs, you can't beat them playing cowardly or settling for field goals. Sometimes in the moment, coaches just get lost in their own minds.
I agree. Bronco Batman's good to see you, my friend. Appreciate the super chat. He says, 4-0 these next games. Love the pod, guys. Denver Broncos for life. Hey, it's possible. I mean, if you look at the remaining slate, you got the Panthers on the road, home against the Bills, on the road, Chargers, home against the Raiders.
Tough.
So it's possible, but I think probably the best case scenario 2-2. I would say 3-1 is the absolute best case scenario. If you were asking me right now to make a pick and say, well, how do they finish these remaining 4? I'm with you, Zach. I'm going 2-2.
I just think the Broncos, they treated yesterday's game like their Super Bowl against it. They left it all out there. I mean, they pretty much battled for all 60 minutes, and I think that was the last bit of oomph they had this season. Now the playoffs are a pipe dream, and Locke hasn't stepped up to be the guy this season. I don't see 3 wins left in this team. I think they will beat Carolina this week, and they can beat the Chargers because they have already. They can beat the Raiders, but Buffalo's a tough opponent. The Raiders are tough. They're all tough. I think 2-2 with this team and these injury situations, I think that's a decent record to hope for.
You end up, if that's the case, with 2 more wins, you end up as a 6-10 club. So you end up regressing by 1 win based on Vic Fangio's maiden season as head coach. But in the face of the absolute epidemic of injuries, again, I think the Bronco brass is more inclined to view this as kind of a mulligan year for Coach Fangio. Zeus in the house. Stu McPeak, MHH Mount Rushmore. If you can look up and make out the face of that mountain through the clouds, the first visage you will see etched in that stone is Zeus McPeak. Love you, buddy. Appreciate your support as always. And we're just happy to have you in the stream, my friend.
Yep.
From Facebook, Josh brings up a hot button issue. Please tell me that Brett Rypien isn't up for consideration starting hearing rumors. Zach, we might be somewhat guilty of perpetuating the notion that it's a thing because we wrote an article today. I did covering what Vic Fangio said on this topic. But let me read to you the quote from Vic Fangio today. All right. Hey, these remaining 4 games, you've got another young quarterback in Brett Rypien, perhaps some potential there. Are you going to give him a shot at any point in these remaining 4 games? You ready for the quote? No. Boom. Done.
Conversation over. Yeah, because, they get nothing but from playing the guy, Chad. I mean, he's a nice number 2 to have. He's never going to be a long-term starter, whereas Locke, the jury is still out on the guy, and they have 4 more games where they left to answer the question, is he the guy for 2021 and beyond that? So there's no point in playing any other quarterback except the one you're playing because you have to answer that question. It's the most important part of this season.
All right, I'm trying to find this tweet. I don't think he deleted it. Let me see. From Jerry Jeudy here. Hold on. I saw it. Maybe he did delete it. So this super chat here from Base Gase. Appreciate you, my friend. Good to see you. Base Gase is so consistent. Like it's every single stream. My friend, I don't think you're on Twitter because I've asked you many times, hey, are you on Twitter? Let's connect, blah, blah, blah. But what you should do is send Zach and I an email, milehighhuddle@gmail.com, and let's send you out a t-shirt. It's a small way that we can thank you for your support. It's just been consistent day in, day out. All the shows, all 7 nights a week, you're supporting the pods. So reach out to us. We'll just want your t-shirt size and your shipping address. We'll get you a little t-shirt out. He says, did y'all see Jerry Judy's deleted tweet? Oh, okay. So it was deleted. Sounded like a slight dig at Locke. So let me paraphrase. It said something to the effect of, at least I got my conditioning in, right? That's what he tweeted immediately following last night. Jerry Judy's stat line. Let me drop some knowledge on you real quick, and then we will I'll serve this over to you. Jerry Judy's official stat line from last night, 4 targets, 1 catch, 5 yards, and it came on the Broncos' last drive, a desperate drive. So your thoughts, Zach?
You know what? Maybe this is just the way I'm thinking, but it's not so much a dig at Locke. It's a dig on the coaches for not getting him involved. And, you can look at injury situations and poor quarterback play, but let me just reference the Cowboys really quickly. They've been on 4 quarterbacks this season. Ben DiNucci is worse than Drew Lock could ever be. And you know what? They still made it a point to get their first-round wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, the football. 1 catch for 5 yards when he used a first-round pick, number 15 overall, on perhaps the best receiver in this draft class is inexcusable. Jerry Jeudy's been a little ornery this year, Chad. He's made a little couple ripples in his comments and his body language, but this to me is frustration at the entire offensive scheme and operation, not just the quarterback.
I think it is mostly just, look, I mean, he's a first-round pick, right? This is a guy whose ego, and I don't mean this in any critical way, it's just a fact, is huge, all right? And if he goes an entire game with one catch for 5 yards, and especially when you're going up against a big measuring stick like the Chiefs and the juggernaut Star Wars numbers that they produce, you're going to feel a little slight, a little bit slighted. You're going to feel like, you let people down. And so when he says, hey, at least I got my cardio in, I think that's partly frustration of him genuinely being frustrated that he wasn't able to be more involved in that game and connect. Locke did look his way 4 times. In fact, if we were to gauge his involvement based on targets, he would be tied for the 3rd most targets in the offense yesterday with Tim Patrick, 4 targets. Fant led the way with 7, and then Hamler second with 5 targets in the passing game. I don't read too much into this. People want to go, oh, this is his, a passive-aggressive shot at Drew. I really don't see it that way. He did delete it, which does kind of hint at perhaps, it's like a Freudian hint that he did mean something slightly malicious in it. But honestly, I think is more the product of a prideful, I should say, rookie 1st-round pick, still relatively immature. He just needs to learn that sometimes in the NFL, you're not going to be the man in a given game, and you got to take your lumps and look at the film to figure out perhaps what you did or didn't do to only end up with 1 catch for 5 yards. And yeah, Jerry, I did cover that article with Rypien, so you guys go read that when you get some time.
I also think Jeudy has a good agent in his ear saying, listen, delete that. You don't want that associated with you. You don't want fans to call back on that. And I made this point in September when these Jerry Jeudy questions were popping up with his drops, and you just hit on it. He was so used to being the man in college. He was a big fish in a small pond, and now he's a little tadpole in a huge ocean. So he's not the guy anymore. He's not getting any looks, and he looks around the NFL too, Chad, compared to Henry Ruggs, made a game-winning touchdown yesterday. CeeDee Lamb's having a good season. Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in this draft class, over 1,000 yards already. And what is Jeudy? He's playing for a losing team with an inconsistent quarterback. He's getting no national headlines, no national press. He went from Alabama to Denver, and it's like he's forgotten about. So in that sense, from a human level, I understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, was it ill-advised? Yes. Do you blame him for feeling that way? No. Mike Evans, another just absolute stud and consistent superstar who has contributed in big, big ways to MHH and just where we are at this point, our success as a channel, as a podcast on YouTube. Mike, you've played a big role in that. We love you and we appreciate you. And we'll get you on the show here in the near future. As soon as the hustle and bustle of this season dies down a little and we're not so slave to the, to the grind in terms of the news cycle, we definitely want to be able to bring you back on. We look forward to that. Yes. Based on performance to date, what letter grade would you give Drew Lock? Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Zach, I'll start this one off and I'll say so far, and this is going to include last year and this year.
I was going to ask that.
Overall body of work, I'm just going to paint with as broad a stroke as possible. Yeah, I'll agree with Steve Baumgartner. I'll give him a C+, which is a barely passing grade. It's just slightly above passing grade, slightly above average. Guys, I am not beelining it for the cliff. I'm not beelining it for the panic button on Lock. Is it what we hoped and expected he'd be in year 2, sitting here now, heading into week 14? Absolutely not. But again, with the full scope of, early on this year, Zach, I took some flack because I said, look, show me the young quarterbacks that are just lighting it, going straight from the draft and lighting it up out, take the unicorns out of the equation, like the Mahomeses and even the Lamars. Who else is doing that? And guys are like, well, what about Kyler? And look at what Joe Burrow's doing. Look at what Justin Herbert's doing. Well, guess what you've seen in the interim? You've seen that peak, and then you've seen that valley. And Drew has had those peaks and valleys, maybe not quite as high of peaks as some of these other guys that, he gets compared to. But nevertheless, it's par for the course. I expect Drew to have the ups and downs. I expect there to be inconsistencies. Do I want it to be better? Yes. I'm like John Elway talking to Broncos TV every Tuesday. I want to see more consistency. But a C+, I submit at this point, Zach, in the wake of all the injuries, in the wake of just a bizarre offseason and all the losses of reps and all that stuff, I submit that a C+ from Drew at this point isn't the worst thing in the world in terms of, if you're looking at holes in the boat or, bad results. It's not the worst thing.
It's just, for me, comparing Locke, the 2019 quarterback, versus Locke, the 2020 quarterback. It's like apples and hand grenades. It's two different guys, Chad. Two different coaches, two different schemes. I thought last year he was a B minus. He went 4-1. Scangarello was really, looking back on it in hindsight, doing a lot of magic with Drew Lock, calling plays that maximize, for the most part, his skill sets and his strengths and hiding his weaknesses. There's a reason why, again, I know the film wasn't out. He went 4-1 coming off cold off the bench. Last year, B minus. This year, oh man, if there was something between D plus and C minus, I'd probably give him that. He's just been a little too inconsistent. And I understand, I'm not faulting him for the inaccuracy or not seeing certain one or not going through his reads. The hero ball moments are what lose me, because you're literally going like this. Here, take it. I don't want it. You guys can have the ball. We don't want to win this game. You can't do that, especially when playing the Kansas City Chiefs. You have to play your best game, like you mentioned, Chad, on your P's and Q's 100% of the time, 60 minutes every second. That's what loses me this season. But I don't fault him 100%, because it's on his coaches to coach that out of him. He should never be out there making the same mistakes now going into week 14 as he was making in week 1 and in week whatever last year. So it's hard for me to judge or grade Locke with this set of coaches, with this set of circumstances. I think this year, last year B minus, this year I'll say C minus for Locke. So not too terrible.
I think that's fair. I really do. It's really interesting you bring up the different coaches and how much that affects the developmental curve of a young quarterback. Last year, one of the things we consistently heard both from Locke, once he became the starter, and offensive coordinator Rich Scangarello, which we got to talk to him once a week, just like we get to talk to Pat once a week, was the fact that the emphasis was, hey, it's okay when you're a young quarterback. I mean, it's not ideal. We don't love it, but it's okay if you make a mistake. The key is not repeating it. Locke did a phenomenal job last year of, when he would make that mistake, not repeating it. This year, throw that out the window. It's the same mistake over and over and over again. And that is one thing that you can clearly, and I mean, without any question, connect to coaching. That's a coaching flaw, deficiency. Just in comparison from the Scangarello-McCartney duo to the Shermer and Shula duo. And it's very disappointing, Zach, because the duo currently coaching him brings a much more significant wealth of NFL experience to the table than Skanks and TC. Mr. Boggins jumping in, one of our superstars, and also a guy that is very helpful to MHH on Facebook with our Facebook, or what is it called? The MHH Denver Broncos super fan group that's connected to our page. Boggins is a moderator there, and he does a good job trying to, especially after games like yesterday where emotions ran high, we're leading at halftime, and then they dipped down in disappointment, trying to keep that going. So Mr. Boggins says, what heights will Elway go to find his franchise quarterback with a stacked quarterback division, a high ceiling roster percentage is hot seat getting hotter, 2021, 2022, or bust? Right now, Boggins, if you're asking me, my gut tells me the Broncos stay committed to Locke through 2021. And then they'll let the chips fall from there. Because at that point, Elway has a big decision to make. Perhaps there will be a turnover finally on the ownership front, in terms of maybe Elway has zero control over whether or not he sticks, because a new owner comes in and wants to just bring in his own guys and kind of do a full-on reset. We'll see. But in the interim, I think Elway's ideal is, hey, I'm under contract through 2021. Drew is still the guy for that. Maybe they bring in better options to kind of push / mentor him, bring in a Ryan Fitzpatrick if you can, pay him enough money. You'd have to pay him enough to come sit on his butt. But nevertheless, something like that. I think Elway at this stage, Zach, is committed to knowing his own curve as a quarterback, and it took him some time to turn the corner, sticking one more year with Locke. But in fairness, Zach, I don't think the Broncos, if Locke doesn't show anything next year, let's say Elway wasn't entering a contract year in 2021 and he was under contract for 5 more years. Let's say he had an open-ended ticket in that sense for now. I think the Broncos would be remiss to say, look, we're giving him to go beyond 2021. That's it. If he can't prove within that window of time that he can master this and really be the guy, then you do have to move on and look for something else. But this was such an outlier season that It's just frankly puts the Broncos in a really tough situation in terms of really trying to discern whether or not they're making the right decision because, the entire sample size is so marred by all these weird outlying mitigating factors.
Your penultimate point there is something I wanted to say, that I don't see Elway being on the hot seat next year because his contract expires. If the Broncos have another down year, he can walk away and retire. He's not going to get fired. Or if they win a good season next year, they go back to the playoffs, let's say next year, he can either get a new contract or retire. So his seat's not hot at all. He actually has all the leverage right now. He's signed through next season. He can pick and choose what quarterback he wants to play, and he knows that they can probably fire Fangio after next season, and it wouldn't even be on him, even if he does not get re-signed or does retire. So whether Locke can be the guy, I don't think they're deciding on that yet, Chad. I don't think they're looking just yet because they still have 4 more games left of Drew Lock. And I know you guys are ready to jump ship and ready to write him off and turn the page to next year. The Broncos aren't doing that, though. It's not how the scouting community works in the NFL. It's not how the process works. 4 more games, then they start looking at quarterbacks through the draft. It's not going to be a veteran. No Matt Staffords, no Matt Ryans, no Sam Darnolds, no Carson Wentz's. It's Locke or a young quarterback, meaning a rookie, next season.
Isaiah 1127 jumping in on Super Chat. Really appreciate you, my friend. Another guy that's kind of really become a consistent superstar, and it just means a lot to us, my friend. He says, Josey Jewell and Alexander Johnson cannot cover tight ends. We have to upgrade this position in the offseason with the tight ends in the AFC West. Thoughts? Hashtag MHH fam. Yeah, and by the way, John, the question I was going to grab was similar to that, so forget what I just DM'd you. After Isaiah, whoever's up next, throw them on there. But let me just point this out, Isaiah. And Zach, as I serve this over to you, we've been pointing out for a long time that that's just been a constant thorn in the Broncos' side. They chose to kind of ignore, is ignore the right word? Yeah, I'll say ignore.
Yeah. Yes.
The off-ball linebacker position in the offseason by way of free agency and the draft. You can't really count Mark Barron. That was a, oh crap, cover our butt situation. Ignore, I don't know. They drafted Justin Strnad this year and he got injured, but nevertheless, they didn't prioritize it. Let's put it that way. They didn't prioritize it. They didn't completely ignore it, but they didn't prioritize it. However, if you're looking at the AFC West, let's just look at the Chiefs, for example. What defense in the league can take away Travis Kelce? Name the defense. None. So if you're going off of that, look, my message there is the best you can hope to do against guys like that and guys like Waller. I'm trying to think. Hunter Henry, he's okay. He's to me, he's a middle of the road NFL tight end. He's not a Waller. He's definitely not a Kelce. But the best you can do against those guys, Zach, is limit them. So I guess the question is, how do you do that? You do need to upgrade your linebacker talent in terms of you need to just bring more athleticism to that position. Like Josey Jewell and Johnson, solid NFL caliber 2-down thumpers. But that has been the story on the Broncos off-ball linebacker position now since Danny T departed in free agency after the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree with the premise of what you're making, but there's a difference between limiting him and letting him go off for a game-high 135 yards, whatever he had in a touchdown. He was the leading receiver in yesterday's game. That's including Broncos receivers and Chiefs receivers, including Tyreek Hill. And Chad, it's every single tight end the Broncos face, not just the Kelce's and the Darren Wallers. It's literally every tight end. And you're right on the money. They've ignored a dynamic inside linebacker. And someone shot back at you about Strnad. He was a late-round draft pick. He was a flyer. He wasn't a first- or second-round blue-chip guy. They have to invest in that position. They weren't getting by with Todd Davis. They cut him. Josey Jewell is, like you said, great in run support. AJ is good in run support, not that great in coverage. Until they get that 3-down Patrick Willis or Navarro Bowman, they're going to keep struggling, or Luke Kuechly. They have to get that guy in the building. I got a question on Twitter today. The Broncos right now are slated to pick number 10 overall in the draft. And I was asked, what positions should they target? Quarterback, offensive line, defensive back, but inside linebacker has to be on that list. They cannot keep ignoring it in today's NFL, which is a passing league.
Well said. Lawrence Rivera jumping in. It's good to see you, my friend. This is a cat that has increasingly become a big-time supporter of MHH, and it just means a lot to us, my friend. He says, we have the best receiver core we've had in years. How long till Vic realizes this is a sport and let players compete for quarterback? So do you really think, well, I don't know. I was just going to say, do you really think anyone that's currently on the roster could truly beat Locke in an open competition? And as soon as it came out my mouth, I thought, I know the coaches really love what Brett Rypien. It's kind of like that semi quasi that quandary the Broncos found themselves in 2016 and 2017, where they knew Trevor Siemian wasn't it, but the brain component, and that's what the coaches gravitated toward, his command and his intellectual wherewithal as a quarterback. He could take the coaching and immediately apply it. He could take the scheme and the playbook and all this stuff and assimilate it so much faster, reading the defense, better at it. But the athletic juice in comparison to Paxton Lynch, as much of a bumbling giraffe as he was a drop in the bucket. All right. Siemian, not even close to the athlete that Paxton Lynch was. In the case of Rypien v. Locke, I don't personally, I'd be surprised if they're really that far apart in terms of football IQ. But from an athletic perspective, Rypien doesn't even come close to Drew Lock. So I guess I'm curious to know, Lawrence, what you mean. Like, do you mean letting the current crop that's on the roster now openly compete with 4 games to go? Or are you talking in a macro sense, looking at 2021, bringing in a quarterback in the draft, another veteran, and just letting the chips fall? I'm not sure what you mean there, my friend.
If Paxton Lynch was a bumbling giraffe, what's Joe Flacco? A geriatric giraffe? Like, a corpse? What would that be? No, but the thing with Locke is they're not evaluating any other quarterback on this roster, including Rypien, including Bortles, including Jeff Driscoll, to be the face of the franchise going forward. That was always Locke or bust for this season. So it makes no sense right now on December 7th to open up a quarterback competition when the playoffs aren't in the picture. You have nothing to lose, and the sole intent of the rest of this season is to evaluate the young players you have on your roster, starting with Drew Lock. It's the number one objective.
Stu Meat jumping in. He loves the super stickers because he gets the little emoji GIF going there. Appreciate you, my friend. That very generous of you, and it all adds up and it means a lot.
It's Paxton.
We bought a zoo. That's why now all of a sudden I'm thinking of you. Just Stu Meat, you're the man. Appreciate you, Doug.
Surprised I'm not dabbing.
Goldie Dom. Now, this is a name I do not recognize, so welcome and thank you for the support, my friend. He says, Goldie Dom, I think Drew Lock could be really good. Only problem is this team is super young. So much potential. Huge fan, by the way. First super chat.
Appreciate you.
Awesome. Really appreciate you, my dog. I agree that Drew Lock could be really good. I've been saying that since before the Broncos drafted him, that I see franchise caliber tools in this guy and what he brought to the team by way of a spark and the swagger and the emotional juice down the stretch last year. All that stuff, man, it's there. But they just haven't been able to extract it into a consistent product yet. That doesn't mean they can't. Doesn't mean it's off the table as a possibility, but it is frustrating that they haven't been able to do that yet. And yes, you're right. Exacerbating the issue offensively is that, really, yes, they're young across the board, but when you're young at quarterback, it kind of makes you young as an offense because everyone else lives and dies by that inexperience under center.
Chad, you nailed that 100%. It's indisputable to say that Locke has potential. Locke has a ceiling. Locke has upside. But I ask you guys right now the same non-rhetorical question I asked you guys when the hire was made. Is Pat Shurmur the guy to bring out that potential? Is Pat Shurmur the guy to maximize Locke's skill set? And based on what we've seen this season, it is a resounding no. What I was worried about in January, Chad, has come to light in December. That's why I'm saying you can fault Locke all you want. The interceptions are no good. He hasn't developed. He's not progressing. He's regressing. But I'm still holding true to my belief. You put him in a better coach system. Shanahan, McVay, LaFleur, he's a much different quarterback.
Tom El Greco again. Appreciate you, my friend. He says, Kelsey, so slow, always open. Where are the safeties? Simmons and Jackson. It drives me crazy. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I mean, look, Simmons hasn't been quite as good in coverage this year as he was last year, and Jackson has definitely taken a few steps backward as a coverage guy, and that's mostly due to the teeth getting long, right? The gray beard. Father Time takes its toll. But I wouldn't say Kelsey is so slow. Kelsey has probably above average NFL speed for a tight end. What makes him so good is he's an athlete and he's freaking smart, dude. And when that ball comes his way, it doesn't hit the ground. I mean, if it's within the realm of possibly catching it, the dude is catching it. He's just a talent, you know. I hate saying it because he's a Kansas City Chief and all that, but he's top 1-2 tight end in the league. Gronk, that used to be Gronk. Now it's him and the cat. I just brain farted his name in San Francisco. What's
Kittle?
His name?
Yeah.
Thank you, George Kittle. So give the man his credit, but yeah, Simmons and Jackson. Listen, Fangio loves running the zone scheme and different zone coverages, I should say, and different moving the safeties around quite a bit. And he just hasn't had a solid answer yet for covering the tight ends this year. What's ironic, Zach, is he actually did, Fangio, a better job accounting for the safeties in his first year than he has this year.
You know, the reason he's always open, though, what's that? It's excellent coaching, it's excellent game planning, it's excellent play calling, and he's not slow. He's not a burner for a tight end, but he's not slow. I mean, you don't lead the game in receiving yards by being slow. He is, for my money, the best tight end in football, and it's unfortunate he plays in the AFC West. We all know about Kareem Jackson. I think it's popular sentiment, Chad, that he's not that good in coverage, and actually he's looked really bad this year. But I'm going to say something kind of unpopular. Simmons isn't that great in coverage either. I mean, he's way later sometimes than he should be for a guy who wants to be paid like a top 2, maybe even the top paid safety in the NFL. He's a top 8 guy, but based on the way he's been in coverage this year, would I say top 3? No.
Muhammad, there he is, the MHH male model. Appreciate you, my friend, and the support goes a long way, and we love you, my friend. He's number 1 fan. We're your number 1 fan, dude, so thank you for your support, as always. All right, let me see what else we've got here. We're approaching the 1 hour mark. The Queen jumping in. She's going to get her 2 cents in while also supporting what we're doing here with the content. Appreciate you, Christy.
And she's right.
She is right. Better coaching equals a better lock. I wish it were a more convenient answer, because this is super inconvenient that you fired the guy that actually did what very few people in the NFL thought could be done. And that is take Drew Lock in raw form as a rookie quarterback, the guy that we saw in the 3rd preseason game last summer, who was very skittish, very wide-eyed. And when he hit the field again in week 13 after a gnarly injury, he just took a quantum leap. And that was a credit to Skanks. So whatever you want to take away from Skanks as a play caller, and he was definitely kind of finding his way as a first-year coordinator. He made up for it in terms of his development and his, Jedi master acumen, whatever you want to call it, right? And it was a bad decision in retrospect, but they didn't have a crystal ball. They didn't know that they were going to. I'm always going to wonder, even if Pat Shurmur gets fired after this year, which I don't think is going to happen, but if he does, Zach, I'm always going to wonder what could have been in 2020 if Shurmur gets all of OTAs with Locke, all of the preseason, and it's a traditional, NFL calendar. But that's another reason why you can at least be hopeful if the Broncos do hold on to Shurmur, that next year can be better for him and Locke kind of getting on the same page, because they will get all those reps.
I'm going to wonder what 2020 could have been with Scangarello as coordinator and T.C. McCartney as quarterbacks coach, continuing that from last year. Let me make it simple for you guys. There's some quarterbacks out there that transcend coaching. They're kind of coach-proof. That's Patrick Mahomes and I guess to an extent Aaron Rodgers. And there's quarterbacks out there that have to be coached up. Guys like Jared Goff, for example. You take Goff out of a McVay scheme, he is terrible. He is worse than Drew Lock. But you have to have the coaching to kind of maximize that along, just like with Derek Carr, Chad. I always do that. I always mix them up. Just like with Carr in Vegas. Gruden, say what you want about him, but he's done a good job maximizing Carr's skill sets and hiding his weaknesses. And that's what Lock needed. So he's the type, we mentioned it yesterday, he needs to get the interception out of the way, the bad juju out of the way early, and he's a better quarterback, but he has to have the coaching to build him up, Chad. He's just that type of guy, and they don't have that on this coaching staff.
Mr. Castillo jumping in, another guy that anytime we see him in the stream, he's supporting what we're doing, and we really appreciate you, my friend. He says, coaching sets up the routes with the underneath routes. Locke decides which to throw to. Also, Shanahan has shown in 2 Super Bowls that he can't make the call. Yeah, Shanahan has shown in 2 Super Bowls that he can't protect a lead. That's the problem. But in his defense, he didn't have complete control in the first one because he was just the coordinator. He couldn't control, for example, the fact that Dan Quinn's defense completely just laid down in the second half for Tom Brady. But yeah, I mean, Shanahan, that's I think the jury, to be frank with you, is still out on Kyle Shanahan as a head coach in this league. We'll see. I think I think he's going to end up rebounding. He and the Broncos are the two teams this year that were the most devastated because of the pandemic and how it affected injuries. But yeah, coaching, it does. It affects the routes. There's no getting around it. And Shanahan's just one of the most creative minds with that. I would love to see Drew Lock in a Kyle Shanahan scheme. I mean, that would be phenomenal.
I was going to say, I mean, you can knock Shanahan, his Super Bowl, and his play calls. We're talking about Kyle here, right? Not Mike. I would do really questionable, if not illegal, things to get Kyle Shanahan on the Broncos coaching staff. And if they would have just hired him, Chad, I know it's revisionist history, but he is the key. Coaching is the key to maximizing Locke or any quarterback. I still say this. We can't prove it or disprove it. You put Locke in a Shanahan system, it's night and day difference immediately.
All right, guys, we are at the 1 hour mark, so we got to blast through our superstars that are remaining rapid fire style here, Zach. Justin Ansel, a guy that has been with us a long time. We don't see him in every single stream, but when he's here, he makes his presence felt. We appreciate you.
Yes,
Justin. He says, "What's up, guys? The one big thing I can take away from last night, why punt on 4th and 3rd when KC will get the ball back regardless? Why does that happen? Frustrating, but that was a game of hope." Yeah, we definitely have spent some time on that topic. We feel your pain and frustration there, Justin. Just hang in there, my dog. Stir King, 31. Been a minute since we've seen Stir King, and we appreciate that generosity, my friend. He says 55.4% completion, worst in the league. Can you honestly say Brett would not have done better? Why would Rypien not get a chance to prove he can be the guy? Nobody thought Brady was better than Bledsoe's arm talent. That's a fair point, but that's another unicorn comparison. Brett Rypien, guys, what are you talking about? He threw 2 touchdowns to 3 picks against the Jets. The Jets. You're vaulting this cat? Now, look, I understand the Pickens seem like they're slim right now, Zach, right? With how Drew Lock has not kicked it into a high gear and, kind of turned the corner. But this is, I wouldn't even call it recency bias. This is a backup quarterback is the most popular guy in town type of bias. Look, it's not that Rypien's not good. It's not that he doesn't have NFL utility, but this guy is not an athlete at the position. He's not a guy that's going to, carry you forward. If he comes in there, let me tell you what you'd see. You would see in the first and second quarter a more modestly efficient offense. But in the second half, decimated, absolutely just bludgeoned by NFL defenses after they get a few looks at him and kind of see what he likes. He doesn't have the athleticism. He's a guy you want in a pinch. He's your emergency guy. He's your backup. That's what he is. He's Trevor Siemian with maybe a slightly better arm.
You know what this is, Chad? It's no disrespect to the question, but it's LDS, Lock Derangement Syndrome. We're literally comparing Brett Rypien to Tom Brady now. Is that how much we all hate Drew Lock out there? Is it really that bad? And I'm with you. What did Rypien do that was so overwhelmingly amazing in that Jets game? They beat the Jets. If you watch yesterday's game, it should prove they are a joke franchise. That win shouldn't even count. Yes, a win is a win, but it should not make Rypien get credit, toward a starting job or put him ahead of Lock on the depth chart. He is not going to be the number one. He was not drafted, obviously, for that reason. He's a low-level backup to have, like you said, Chad, in the mold of a Trevor Siemian. You have to answer whether Lock can be the guy. There's no other quarterback that question applies to on the Broncos roster except for Lock.
Now, if Drew went down and was a loss for the season, I would be saying give as many, if not all, the reps to Rypien as you can because, there is the outside chance that he could be that Tom Brady. But even compared to Tom Brady, who you want to talk about a giraffe, turn on the recording of him running the 40 at the combine, dude, as a rookie entering the league. But he does have an slightly above average NFL arm, especially in his prime. And he is the alpha to end all alphas when it comes to the quarterback position. And, I've been in the presence of Brett Rypien. He's a quiet cat, dude. He's very reserved, quiet confidence. There's a confidence there. Don't get me wrong, but he's not that. All right. Discount Audio and Wheels, our friend Tony jumping in with the generous super. Love you, my friend. Good to see you. He says they should publicly say Rypien always has a shot. Maybe that makes Locke look over his shoulder a bit and play better. If you're worried Locke can't handle that, then he definitely isn't your guy. Make Locke compete and fight for 21. That's a fair point in terms of some old school Bill Parcells head coach quarterback psychology. Zach, what say you?
I don't subscribe to it. Not in today's NFL. I'm not saying you have to coddle your quarterback, but having that level of fear, instilling that level of uncertainty or tentativeness is not the way to go about building a locker room or building an offense. You have to separate the guy from the rest. It's the same reason why the drawn-out quarterback competitions that the fan made such a big deal out of with Team Trevor and Team Paxton, all it was doing was hurting the Broncos. You need to, that full-time guy, the quarterback one in your room, needs to get the full number of reps with the rest of the first stringers. It makes no sense having Fangio say, well, Drew, you might play better, or else you're going to get benched. It's not how you build a quarterback. It's actually the opposite. You can't nag him to death. He wouldn't respond to that any better than giving him no leash at all. So I just think you have to roll with the punches. This is what the NFL is with a young quarterback, especially one that you don't win with right away. It's a process. It's up and down. It's a roller coaster, and the Broncos just have to stay on that ride for 4 more weeks.
Cody jumping in. Thank you, Cody Potter. It's good to see you, my friend. Consistent as well. We love you. Appreciate you. He says they need veteran presence on the offensive leadership, and they might do that. They might bring in a vet to kind of help mentor and kind of steward Lock forward. We'll see. Shout out to RIPTG, who is, from my understanding, if I remember this right, John, correct me if I'm wrong in the DM here, related to one of our Hall of Fame superstars, TG, who, to our understanding, we've never had perfect clarity on this, is no longer with us, but nevertheless, RIPTG, appreciate you, my friend. And we mostly, I share the spirit of what you're saying there. Also, I want to shout out real quick because we're about to get out of here. Albert Knoppers, who's just longtime MHH supporter. He's an official Facebook supporter of MHH, and he jumps onto Super Chat sometimes just to show support. It's good to see you, my friend. Here's Jason Christopher.
Yes. Pay Shelby, guys.
Appreciate the super. He says, Shelby Harris gets an A+ grade for the season for me. Hashtag pay Shelby. Yeah, undoubtedly. It's just a shame and a tragedy that he had to miss 4 games because he was just – he showed it again yesterday. Conditioning gone, and yet he steps onto the field, affects the game in a big, bad way. And then Stewie, appreciate that. Aloha to you as well.
I've never seen anyone, I mentioned this last night, anyone better, including J.J. Watt, bat passes down, especially in clutch situations, than Shelby Harris. Hashtag pay Shelby.
Muhammad jumping in, our male model, jumping in to say, I love you guys. Please stay great. Hashtag CEO, hashtag dragon, hashtag beast. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Muhammad.
Goes a long way. The support. Trust us when we say that. And then Cody, and I think we're out of here for – no, we got one from David jumping in, I see. Cody says, appreciate you, Cody. With Elway and Lynch being good friends, talking about John Lynch, GM, Niners, can you see a lock trade in the wind if we finish high enough for a new QB? I don't think so, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. Again, he's a perfect fit as lock for the Kyle Shanahan scheme. They would be gangbusters in my opinion. But I don't think the Broncos are there yet. I don't think they're off on him, and I don't even necessarily know that the Niners have any love or like Locke in particular. Maybe, though, if Elway was of a mind to put Locke on the block and dangle him, maybe they would take a sniff and nibble at that possibility, the Niners and John Lynch.
Well, I just pulled it up. He's under contract next year in 2021 for $1.057 million. That is couch change to an NFL franchise. It's actually more useful to keep him than get rid of him. If anything, he can make a good number 2 next year, and at best, he can compete for a starting job if you don't draft a guy in the top 10 or sell the farm for a quarterback. It makes no sense moving on because you still haven't harnessed with a better coaching staff what Locke can do, and he's so cheap, Chad, and under contract. Just keep him around. You never know what can happen.
David Kilgore, one of our favorite superstar profile picks on YouTube and a special guy in our heart here at Mile High Huddle. Thank you, David. He says, why can't we see Blake Bortles? He was an NFL starter and had that experience.
Was for a reason.
Yes, because it doesn't move the needle forward. The season's lost, David. So at this point, it's, again, using these reps to try and set you up for a better future. Bortles doesn't do that. And maybe you end up not liking what you see from Locke, and after this season, make a decision to move on at the quarterback position. But these 4 games provided you that body of work to complete that evaluation and move on. So Bortles wouldn't move that needle forward in any way, shape, or form. Now, if you said maybe you're of the opinion Bortles gives you a better chance to go in and beat the Panthers than Drew Lock, I don't know where you're seeing that. Bortles had 1 solid year, 1, and he was dragged by hook and crook by that defense in Jacksonville. So he's replacement. He's not even replacement level backup. Like, he's bottom of the barrel backup, a guy that wasn't even on a roster when Drew Lock went down in week 2. That's Blake Bortles.
He's not a replacement level. He's the backup that gets replaced. And the thing with Bortles, take away 2017. Did you guys watch him in Jacksonville? Okay, now expect to watch him. Imagine watching him with a Pat Shurmur called offense. Cue the Benny Hill theme music, Chad.
Indeed. Love you, David. Seriously. Really appreciate you, my friend. And we appreciate each and every one of you for spending some time with us here tonight. We really have just a unique love and appreciation for the Super Chat superstars that and our Facebook supporters and those of you who generously give us stars on Facebook, because it allows us the means, okay, to continue to prioritize this content for you religiously. Every day, 6 p.m. to 7, you're getting a live stream podcast. You're getting an hour plus of our time, not just sitting here talking to you, but the time we spend planning what we're going to talk about on the show, buying the gear that it takes to do these podcasts and the lights and the mics and all the different things that go into this stuff behind the scenes. You guys provide us the means to do that, to budget that time. And, maybe we'd be writing articles instead, and that's just something that we have to thank you for. It just means the world to us, Zach.
Yeah, I can't say it better than that. We say this at least a couple times a week, and every single time it's more genuine than the last. We have so much appreciation and gratitude for every single viewer, every single comment, every single penny, every single second you guys spend with us. We cannot say we appreciate it any more than we do. It's purely heartfelt, guys. Thank you.
Last thing here, Huddle Up Pod on Twitter. Also, you want to follow the main account at Mile High Huddle. You want to follow Zack Kelberman at Kelberman NFL. Myself at Chad and Jensen, and then also our producer, John Cronenberg, on Twitter at John K. MHH. Oh, wait, John's giving me okay, we got one more, a super sticker from Muhammad on the way out the door. Appreciate you, my dog. Very, very generous of you today. So, but thanks, guys. We're off tomorrow, Zach and I. You'll get Nick and Carl and a fresh episode of Building the Broncos, but Zach and I will be back Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern, and there's Muhammad's super sticker. Appreciate you, my friend. But Zach, have a great start to your week, my friend. We'll see how things shake out when we circle back on Wednesday. We'll start taking a look at the Panthers.
Yeah, I can't get that pair doing Taekwondo out of my mind. That's pretty trippy super sticker. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Chad. I'll see you on Wednesday. And until next time, and as always,